ABC Jimmy Kimmel and brother Jonathan Kimmel are taking a look at nepotism. The pair are behind The Nepotist, a multi-camera comedy series in development at Fox from Meadow Lark Lane Productions and 20th Century Fox TV. The project follows Tom Primo, who is sick of employing his unqualified mother, son, daughter and ex-wife, so he enlists kind-hearted Josh Dixon to supervise them. Also read how Jimmy Kimmel became an unlikely folk hero in Trump healthcare debate. John writes and executive produces the show that also counts Jimmy as an executive producer. John is a comedy director at Jimmy Kimmel Live and his writing-producing credits include Crank Yankers, The Andy Milonakis Show and South Park. I've been a big fan of nepotism ever since the first show my brother hired me on, John quipped. Jimmy Kimmel has been making more headlines than ever lately, given his recent role in the healthcare debate and his increasingly political viewpoints on his late-night talk show. The Republicans are continuing their attempt at repealing the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, with the Senate voting to push a repeal bill to floor debate. The bill looks to roll back a number of the protections put in place by the ACA to protect Americans from issues like being denied coverage for pre-existing conditions or hitting lifetime limits on care. But people hated American healthcare so much before 2010, Hollywood made plenty of movies, TV shows and documentaries about it. Here's a list of films that are a helpful reminder of how American healthcare used to be in the pre-2010 world. As Good as It Gets 1997. Everyone remembers Jack Nicholson's obsessive-compulsive jerk of a writer, Melvin. What's easy to forget is he uses his substantial wealth to bail out a waitress Helen Hunt from her son's high medical bills for his asthma. She notes how she gets screwed by, guess who, her HMO, when a doctor hired by Melvin shows up to give her son actual, competent medical care. Last Holiday 2006. Greed bad, kindness good. That's the moral of Last Holiday, in which Queen Latifah goes on an expensive vacation after learning she has a brain tumor that will kill her. Of course, her insurance won't cover risky life-saving surgery. Latifah makes friends with almost everyone she meets at the hotel and they learn from her example. And then it turns out the tumor diagnosis was a mistake, so everyone wins. Dallas Buyers Club 2013. Taking on the Food and Drug Administration rather than insurance companies, Dallas Buyers Club focuses on how federal food dragging kept life-saving drugs out of the hands of AIDS patients in the 1980s. Matthew McConaughey fights for the right to take an unapproved drug and wins, and learns to be less of a terrible person along the way. Critical Care 1997. Getting the flip side of the healthcare debate, critical care is all about the level of care you receive when you have good insurance. Focusing on a man in a vegetative state, James Spader finds himself playing a doctor who wonders if it's ethically cool to just keep people alive and maybe suffering because it's profitable. Breaking Bad 2008. Everyone knows Walter White. Bryan Cranston becomes Heisenberg, a meth-making Albuquerque kingpin, but they might not remember why. Medical bills. Walt receives a cancer diagnosis that he fears will bankrupt his family, and meth is a way for him to leave them enough money to survive before he goes. With issues like pre-existing conditions on their way back, it seems likely lots of people will be searching for extracurricular ways to pay their medical bills, and GoFundMe campaigns can only go so far. Sicko 2007. Documentarian Michael Moore picks apart the healthcare system and highlights the people it leaves behind. That includes 911 first responders in New York. The film digs into the history and issues of the U.S. employer-based insurance system, a lot of which will come back under the Republican bill, and compares it to alternatives like those in Cuba, Canada and the United Kingdom. The Rainmaker 19978. John Grisham David v. Goliath legal story. The Rainmaker sees Matt Damon and Danny DeVito take an extremely evil insurance company to court. The extremely evil insurer denies coverage to a couple whose son is dying of leukemia, but Damon and DeVito eventually wallop it in court. The reality of fighting insurance companies in court in the future will likely be less uplifting. Saw v. 2009. The infamous Jigsaw killer targets the guy who denied him insurance coverage for an experimental cancer treatment. Jigsaw's revenge make the guy who decides who lives and who dies for a living do it in a much more handsome, gory way. At the end of the movie, another family he decided not to cover gets to choose whether to melt the insurance guy with acid. Guess which option they pick? John Q. 2002. Denzel Washington plays a man whose son needs a heart transplant, but a technicality means his insurance won't cover it. He takes an emergency room hostage, but, since everyone knows how evil insurance companies are, he manages to befriend everyone there. And then his son gets his operation, and John saves the healthcare system. The Republicans are continuing their attempt at repealing the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, with the Senate voting to push a repeal bill to floor debate. The bill looks to roll back a number of the protections put in place by the ACA to protect Americans from issues like being denied coverage for pre-existing conditions or hitting lifetime limits on care. But people hated American healthcare so much before 2010, Hollywood made plenty of movies, TV shows and documentaries about it. Here's a list of films that are a helpful reminder of how American healthcare used to be in the pre-2010 world.